Wait. Yeah, go.
This is Unit 15, Major Incidents Assignment 2. With this assignment, we are planning a major incident. In the case, we are using a train derailment down at the roundabout in Chesterfield. When planning and preparing for major incident, we need to look at many things, such as what the major incident would pose a risk to people. So, in the idea of the train derailment, how that affects people travelling into Chesterfield and out of Chesterfield, going onto the motorway, for example. So, as well as people who may be underneath it when the train comes off the tracks. Hazards we would have to look at as well are things like the traffic, as I just explained then. The weather in this certain occasion, for example, if it's wet and rainy, it'd be hard for people to stop when an incident like that occurs. So, again, it can be an issue due to weather. Media will usually hear things a lot quicker than some emergency services will, and especially when one of the biggest media companies for Derbyshire is actually across the road from the train tracks that we're using. The passengers on the train, if it's a passenger train, then obviously the people who were in the carriages that could have derailed could possibly be seriously injured, so would need help quite quickly. And the members of the public who are in the general area when the train comes off the tracks. When looking at hazards involved and how to prevent and minimise them, and the agencies responsible, we found that with traffic, the prevention for that, you'd basically straight away, as soon as emergency services arrive, have to cordon off the roads, stop the inflow of traffic and let the traffic already there get out. So that would then freeze up the entire area, making it available for all emergency services to either use the bits where you come off to go down the road instead, because that would be completely free with nothing on the roads. The minimalisation of it, create diversions to avoid traffic jams. So instead of them coming onto the roundabout, direct them round the roundabout instead, which there are many ways to get round. And the agencies who would have to be involved with that most likely would probably be the police, although anybody else who's in the area could be able to help with that. For other trains, to stop the trains, you'd have to contact the rail companies for the local area. So as soon as an incident like that would happen, I would expect the agencies to already know about it because of the contact they have with the trains and things like that. But it just you to check up on them just in case there is, so they can stop all trains in the area, make sure that nothing else happens in that route. Divert the trains again on different routes, change the track, make them go round, or if necessary, just stop them altogether. And that would be the highway or railway companies. Oil, fuel leak, you have to identify where it's coming from. So if it's coming from the train or coming from vehicles, you have to make sure that that area is secure. Obviously, you don't want anything like a fire starting or an explosion, something like that. You'd have to try to stop it from coming out, or pump all the rest of the fuel and oil out. So it just meant that nothing else was coming out. It could be kept in a safe environment, and that would most likely be sorted out by the fire service. With the bridge collapse, you'd have to get engineers down, make sure that the bridge is stabilised. You don't want it causing more damage onto the road and potentially causing even more issues. And that'd be the railway engineers and the USAR. For the emergency responders, you'd have regular updates and communication, so they'd be checking on all the people involved in the crash and anybody who got caught up in the crash for derailing.
You have to know like bronze, silver, and gold thing. The responders.
Creating alternative routes to the scene. So like I said, if you cut off the roundabouts, as I can show you down here, if you cut off all the inflow, you could have the emergency vehicles going down outflow roads. So that would mean that they would be clear and leaving the whole roundabout clear for all emergency vehicles. When you're creating alternative routes, that basically everyone will be involved. So you have the police doing it, the fire brigade could be involved as well. You can have local public who are helping out. But obviously then you can get the paramedics, people like that into the area. Can we prevent the major incident from happening? In this case, we couldn't, because the train would already be derailed. But in that case, then you could look at what went wrong and try and prevent that same situation happening again, whether it's that one location or if it's the issue with the train itself. If we can't prevent it from happening, what can you do to minimise the damage? You can look into preventing the incident from becoming worse by closing the roads and not letting the media in. So rather than allowing people into the area and then everyone wanting to see what's going on and getting a close-up look, you can keep them away from the area altogether, which then means that you only have to focus on the people actually involved in the incident. And who do we need to respond? We need to assess which emergency responders we would need from category 1 and 2 in tertiary. It's basically, you'd need the main people, so you'd need, in this situation, the fire service, police service and the NHS to be out there, purely because you'd most likely have people who are injured, even if it's just down to the driver of the train who could be injured, if it's not, for example, a passenger train, or you need the police as well to cordon off the area and the fire brigade to get everything under control, make sure there's no fires or anything like that. Emergency responders from Category 1 used would be the police. Their job would be to create the cordons for the roadblocks, to preserve the scene for evidence and bring criminal proceedings against anyone responsible. So if someone did something to the tracks that then meant the train derailed. The fire service, their role would be putting out the fires, removing injured people and removing debris. They would need to turn off the electric and water if required. So obviously if you have electric train tracks, you need to make sure those are off so nobody gets harmed from that. They would also have specialist chemical teams if needed. So again, if it was a freight train, then it was carrying special equipment, things like that, then you need special equipped firefighters or engineers to deal with the situation. The ambulance service, their role would be to triage and be removing the sick and injured, also ensuring they have the right equipment needed to do the job. So again, obviously with Chesterfield Royal Hospital being nearby, it's very simple to get them there and back quite quickly, so it'd be quite a good location as such for an incident like that to happen, with it only being maybe a mile or two away. The emergency responders from Category 2 used to be the railway. The railway companies, their role would be to close the train tracks to prevent train collisions, so either divert them or just stop all the trains altogether. The highway, they would be responsible for closing the bypass to use as an access route for the emergency responders. So without allowing other vehicles going down into the area, you can then use the outgoing areas to come down with the emergency services. So you've got clear roads to go to a clear roundabout and there's nothing on there to block the way. The council, they'll be called to remove the barriers to create an access point for the emergency responders. Obviously you don't want people coming down the wrong way of the road just to try and get round or anything like that. The NHS, their role would be to communicate with the other hospitals to find room for people injured and send them to hospitals that can deal with their specific injuries. Not all hospitals are built to deal with everything, so having certain places in the local area that can communicate with each other is helpful, because you just literally quickly transport people to different places. Utilities, their role would be to provide the fire service with an extra water needed in case of a fire. They would also turn off any power lines in case of a helicopter coming to the scene, so rather than maintenance that the helicopter can get into the area as quickly as possible. Emergency responders from the tertiary would be air ambulance. Their role would be to take casualties to the appropriate hospital for further care. I'm not sure if Chesterfield Royal Hospital has a helipad, but I know, for example, the Northern General does. So if they needed somewhere that has such a large area that would have other equipment, that Chesterfield Hospital would be probably the nearest place would be the Northern General in Sheffield. The mountain rescue, their role would be similar to the air ambulance and assist in the rescue. In this case, mountain rescue probably wouldn't be necessary, because obviously mountain rescue is all about being in the mountains. The Red Cross, they would treat injured people at the scene and even transport them to hospital. You might not need the Red Cross, to be honest. Obviously with having the NHS and the ambulance service nearby, you probably get a lot more response from them. And then St John's, their role would be similar to Red Cross. In terms of this train derailment, St John's is literally across the road, so we'll be one of the first people to get across as well. The helicopter landing site needs to be close and suitable to the incident site. It needs to be a hard surface area so the helicopter's weight, preferably concrete. Also need to consider power lines, which could be a potential hazard. If you can see on the roundabout here, a lot of these roads you are getting in and you're getting out. So as I've been saying through it, if you go down the in-roads here, then you just block off those roads, meaning that no more traffic can come in. Whereas then with the out roads, you could use those to send emergency vehicles down and come into the roundabout as well, which would be easy access for them. Landing the helicopter on the road closest to the side of the dual carriageway, coming to Chesterfield, would allow us to divert the traffic in other directions as well. So having that area there specifically would be for the helicopter, although there is a car park just over here that you could possibly use. It's a little bit of a distance, but it's an open area that would be good for a helicopter. Regarding to the scenario and the train derailment bridge, which is just here, clearly there would have been some damage to the bridge, and therefore you would have to consider the safety of the bridge. There could be structural damage, and this could have led to the bridge becoming weak. Therefore you'd have to call the engineers, and the number for this is located underneath the bridge. The number is under the bridge shown on the map of the blue arrow. So that is purely because if you call them up and say, oh, this bridge is broken, then they need to know which bridge it is and where it is. On this map, it shows the locations of emergency services are in a close proximity to each other. Therefore, a speedy service will be provided. So we've got Ashgate Ambulance Station over here. We've got Chesterfield Police Station there. With the roundabout being here as well, it's all very close to the area that we need to be in. So it would be a very quick response time with this. it could be possible that we could situate the Silver Command in Derbyshire Times building so they could oversee the accident and how it has been dealt with to report to the Gold Command. The Derbyshire Times building is smack bang on the roundabout with windows pointing over to the area needed. So you could see what was going on without having to wait for people to give you information, but obviously having the two sources of information would be very helpful. The casualties, we need a safe place to go away from the damage in public so the paramedic can get to them. The nearest place would probably be Frankie and Benny's, and you have to clear the tables and clear a few chairs out of the way and close the restaurant down for a while. The tables can be used for casualties to lie on whilst we wait for a paramedic. So that would be more extreme situations, but obviously a lot of the time you'd want to have somewhere to take them rather than leaving them on the side of the road.
Okay, you're on 10 minutes.
Impact on services. Cause stress from seeing the casualties. So people who work for the services, they may be prepared for these situations, but until you actually get into one of the situations, you don't know how you'll react. Impact on the public. Loss of injury of a loved one. If you have, say for example, your son's on the train and the train crashes, obviously the parents are going to be distraught that their son's been injured in that accident. And the impact on the community. So the closure of roads, obviously it disrupts other people's days, people trying to get to work, people trying to get home, things like that. The quickest way to transport casualties to the hospital is up the A632 and up Hady Hill, which leads up to the front of the hospital, which is literally just one road up and then one straight road to the hospital.